Raider Nation, what's going on? It's Mitchell Renz here, host of the Raiders Report, and coming up on today's show, we're going to be looking at 10 players that the Las Vegas Raiders could potentially trade for after the 2024 NFL Draft. I do think this is important to note that I'm not saying that every player that you are going to see on this video is somebody that I want AP and Telesco to trade for. It's more of a who's the most likely list. And here's the thing, man. Making these type of shows is not easy, but all you can do is take reports, take rumors, take things that you hear from other people. Also look at what has happened in free agency and the draft. You put all of that information together, and then that a lot of times is going to equal the players that are most likely to be traded, on top of the fact of which players are the most likely to be traded, which players fit what the Raiders need right now. I tried to make that list for you, and you're going to see that today. If the Raiders do make a trade, here's the one thing I can promise you. I don't need to look at any crystal ball. It says we will be going live. When breaking news happens here around the Silver and Black, we go live, we party, and if breaking news happens and you're going to be watching this live, I want you to spam live down below. Let me know where my real ones are at. I know Zon's always going to pull up. I know Ron Raspberry's always going to pull up. Raider Sancho, my man Chob, 93 Nabman, always going to pull up. Where are my real ones at? The way that I wanted to do this is let's start this thing off with a freaking David Zahn type of bang here, and let's look at a post-draft trade candidate. His name? Trey Lance, quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys. Now, the Raiders would have to pay Lance $5.3 million in 2024, and it would be the final year of his deal. Because the Raiders didn't draft a quarterback, and because from what it sounds like, they were not really interested in selecting a QB in the final, basically, 6 rounds of the NFL Draft, we know what Gardner Minshew is, right? We kind of know what Aiden O'Connell is at this point. And those two quarterbacks fit into one side. With Trey Lance, he kind of fits in this other QB realm of maybe he could still be an athlete. I'll be real with y'all. I have never been a Trey Lance believer, and I am not a Trey Lance believer. I have actually said on this show before that I think Aiden O'Connell is better than Trey Lance. So, Mitch, why is he on the video? He's on the video because Rich Scangarello was the 49ers quarterback coach back in 2021 when they gave up 3 first-round picks to go get him. He's young, he's on a cheap contract, and if you're looking for a QB that maybe can be your franchise guy for 10 years, that maybe can use his legs and offer you a little bit more athletic ability, something that your other two guys really can't do, that's why you trade for Trey Lance, and it's cheap. But again, I don't really want them to do it. I'll tell you what, though. Got a really cool message today from our Browns host here at Chat Sports, and he goes, hey, I heard you talking about Trey Lance. Another quarterback that you could potentially trade for that I believe could be on the block is DTR. And if the Raiders are going to trade for some cheap quarterback that they want to put in a competition battle with Gardner Minshew, with Aiden O'Connell, I got my pick right now. His name is Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Right now, you got to face the facts. The Browns have Deshaun Watson. They gave him $230 million guaranteed. Guess what? He's playing. But then they also signed Jameis Winston, and they also signed Tyler Huntley. So that means right now, DTR probably is that QB4 on that roster. And because we have a really close source here to Chat Sports, we're not sure if he's going to be a good fit with this new OC and Kevin O'Connell, and he is a clear upgrade, in my opinion, over Anthony Brown Jr. If Telesco and AP want to have an athletic quarterback that's, they can use potentially in practice squads and in practice games, like, no disrespect to Anthony Brown Jr., but like the video down below if you think DTR is an upgrade over him. I know I do. Yeah, he's looked like a rookie at times last season, but he also played some pretty solid football, and I do think offers you something a little bit different than what those two other guys can do. My point is, if the Browns have already done this, and he's QB4, if you offer them, let's say, a 7th-round pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, that seems like a good value pick to me. Bring him in, have him ball out a little bit. What'd you say? Las Vegas native. I know a lot of people watched him from UCLA. When you look at the numbers, they're not pretty, but I look at what he did in the preseason, and you just got to get your footing. You need some of those extra reps. And to me, if you want a quarterback competition, Dorian Thompson-Robinson in this quarterback room, I do think would be a pretty fun idea from top to bottom here. So we just went through Trey Lance. We went through Dorian Thompson-Robinson. I got 8 more players coming up here on the show, and this was a segment that I like doing. It's a show that I've done before that I always like to just kind of play like that Sherlock Holmes puzzle game. I mean, I did this on Monday with free agents, and I said one of the players that I would look at is Michael Gallup. few hours later, what do the Raiders do? They end up going out and they making a deal to go sign Michael Gallup. But I love doing this show, and I think the Raiders Report got so popular earlier on YouTube and on Facebook because we were interactive, right? We were an interactive show. We were trying to get people's opinion, and let's play a game right now. If you could pick a quarterback out of the 3 names that are up on screen, you know what? He's not even up on screen, but I kind of want to add him to this as well. Anthony Brown, okay? Those are the names. You got DTR, Trey Lance, Carter Bradley, watch this, and then Anthony Brown Jr., AB. If you could keep only one, and the reason why I want to ask us this is because if your answer is DTR, well then let's make it happen. If your answer is Carter Bradley, Trey Lance, Anthony Brown Jr., well then you don't need to make it happen. But to me, this is so clearly DTR, and it's not really all that close. Young player, athletic, gives you something a little bit different. It can really, really help, I think, create a little bit more competition and also give your defense something that they might not be able to get with Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell because, no disrespect to them, they're not the athlete that Dorian Thompson-Robinson is. Let's go to the next name here on the show. It's wide receiver Treylon Burks from the Titans. Another player that, I'll be honest, I was not very high on when he was first coming out of Arkansas, but I do look at this as a potential yard sale. And the Titans, they signed Calvin Ridley. They've also signed, DeAndre Hopkins. Like, those are your top 2 wide receivers. But then also there's reports right now circulating that the Titans could trade for T. Higgins. If the Titans trade for T. Higgins, that makes Treylon Burks a former first-round pick kind of on the outside looking in. On top of that, we know what new regimes can do. You got a brand new regime down there in Tennessee. And I look at Burks as being a player of, I'm not 100% sold on him from top to bottom. However, though, if he can bring some of his physicality that you see at times with his tape at Arkansas, and like when he played for the Razorbacks in the SEC, you saw some physicality. You saw a guy that wasn't afraid to lay a block. I think with the Titans, they wanted him to just be too crisp of a receiver. That also has been an organization that has not done a good job with young receivers that they've drafted. That's a cold, hard fact. And at 6'2", 225 pounds, it's just another bit of just a little bit of depth. You're saying a 7th-round pick, 6th-round pick, you could probably get Treylon Burks for. Can we see if it ends up working out? That's a name to keep in mind. Let's go to an offensive lineman now. Larry Borom, guard for the Bears. And what's fun about this one is he can play offensive tackle and he can play offensive guard. Also in the final year of his rookie deal, so you could take a 1-year flyer on him, see how it works. He's also played with Luke Getsy the past 2 seasons and has a total of 939 snaps. The Raiders have Thayer Munford. Cool. You have Delmar Glaze. Cool. To me, Larry Borom would be your Jordan Meredith replacement, right? You already have Cody Whitehair. He could play backup center. He could play guard. You let Munford and Delmar Glaze kind of battle it out for like that other spot. But if you're not 100% sold on Jordan Meredith, or if you would like to be able to keep potentially 9 offensive linemen, does it make sense to find a older, not an older player, but a player that has played with Luke Getsy that brings some of that experience in that offense to just be able to help apply some of these other offensive linemen that you just have as depth? That sounds like somebody that I would at least entertain around. Here's another name. This is a big one. Kenyon Green from the Houston Texans, a former first-round pick who really struggled in 2022 and was injured last season. This is like finding a nice car. I'm trying to think of a nice car brand. Like a nice Lexus. Nothing crazy, but a really nice car in a used car lot, and it doesn't have any tires on it. Kenyon Green was a player coming out of Texas A&M that I did like. I didn't think that he was going to go in round 1. I personally had a round 2 grade on him, but like different regimes has a lot of different stuff mixing and matching. Personally, I think Green looks bad in this situation because his stock has gone down when Houston's has just skyrocketed, and sometimes you just need a different change of scenery. The way that I would kind of look at this Kenyon Green role is like when the Raiders had Arden Key, go somewhere else, had a little bit more success. Cleveland Ferrell, never going to live up to a first-round pick. Kenyon Green, never going to live up to a first-round pick. But sometimes you just need that change of scenery to have it mix and match. Solomon Thomas, I think, is another good example of that for like the Raiders' standpoint. They drafted Juice Scruggs out of Penn State in 2023, and the Raiders, you'd only owe them $2.2 million in 2024 and $5.1 million in 2025. Trade for him, real cheap. Take a flyer on him. If you believe in your offensive line coach and James Craig, I would potentially look to see what he could do with a guy like Kenyon Green. Coming up next here, defenders. that the Raiders could trade for him. I'll be real with you, man. This is where it gets fun. I think if the Raiders make a deal, there is one name, and I know when I mention him on the show, y'all are going to blow a flipping load, and you know what? I would too. If the Raiders trade for this one guy that we're about to look at, Chugs just sneezed, so God bless you to Chugs, then I promise you we're going to rally. Also, Mother's Day, y'all, it's right around the corner. If you haven't gotten your mom something, go to chatsports.com/RaiderMom. If that special lady in your life bleeds silver and black, make sure that you know, or make sure she knows that you care about her. And I always know that it's not easy shopping for a mom. Like, I'm not lying to y'all. I just bought my mom a juicer, and she uses that thing all the time. I recently just ordered her this one exactly, this Raiders Mom coffee canteen. You could put the juice in that, Ma, so you can rock with it. Best mom ever. We got one for you. I will say this, though. Jeremy and I, we made a special link, okay? Because there's some moms out there. And then, maybe you got a daughter or whatever, and you want to get her. She's a mom as well. You're a proud grandparent. Shout out to you. I also know there's a lot of, dads out there, a lot of guys out there, and you're like, hey, my wife, she can get it. She can get it. My baby mama, she can get it. And if you want, I'm going to warn you, the link's down there. I dare you to click it, chatsports.com/RaiderMilf if you got a special mom, MILF, in your life and you want to get her some Raider stuff. We got that link for you down there available. Sounds like a good link to click on if you plan on going to a Raiders cruise. That's all I'm saying.
I don't know if you can click on the link in Texas, though. We'll have to check on it. There's a couple things that are banned in Texas. Hopefully, Raider MILF goes through in Texas.
We'll see. I do know this. This is a big hub of Raider stuff. Let's go to the defensive side of the football, and this has been a name that I have brought up multiple times. James Bradberry, cornerback of the Eagles. I can guarantee you this. You could trade right now a 7th-round pick in 2025 to get James Bradberry because the Eagles have already told you, they haven't told you with words, but they've told you with actions that they're going to be moving on from Bradberry at some point this year. He's going to make $12 million on Philadelphia. Here's the fun part. If the Raiders were to trade for him, it would only cost you $1.2 million in 2024, and he has no guaranteed money in 2025, so if you wanted to be able to move on from him, you could. He has experience with Patrick Graham. If the Raiders want to say, okay, MJ Devonshire, DeCamerion Richardson, Jacorian Bennett, we want you three guys to succeed. If I'm the Raiders, I cut Brandon Faison, I save that $2.6 million, and then I go out and trade for a guy like James Bradberry who has experience in this defense. Like, if I make this deal, this isn't me saying, hey, I want Bradberry to be the starter. No, this is me saying I'm making this deal to help some of these younger corners learn that Patrick Graham defense, to learn this scheme. And I do wonder that could you find a Casey Hayward? What do I mean by that? Casey Hayward was once said, done, washed, stinks, no good. Then he goes plays with Gus Bradley, a defense literally made for him, has a Pro Bowl season. The last time James Bradberry was playing at that level, his past season with the Eagles, 2023, bad. 2022, really good year with Philadelphia. 2021 with Patrick Graham, dude was an absolute baller. So all I know is this, $1.2 million for somebody that has experience, I'm on board with that, especially with all the young corners that we have on our roster. Let's go with another fun name here, Ambry Thomas, corner from the San Francisco 49ers, 3rd-round pick in the 2021 NFL Draft. So, I don't like to make all these connections because maybe it's not that big of a deal, but a guy like Rich Scangarillo, quarterback coach of the Niners, I would imagine you at least get to scout some of these guys a little bit, so he's at least there. The 49ers did sign Rock Ya-Sin this offseason, and I know what we think of Rock. Not a lot of NFL teams think of him the same way. He's been a dude battling tons and tons of injuries, but the reason why that I like this fit, and this is my sneaky one, physical player, and he's best in press man. That's exactly what this organization is looking for. 6 foot, 190 pounds, last season with the Niners, 43 tackles, a pick, 7 PBUs. The 49ers have a lot of depth at corner. They really, really do. We reached out to a few people here at Chat Sports that are close with the Niners, and the number one name that they gave us was Ambry Thomas. We're going to keep it here with the cornerback position because if you don't know, I think if this team makes a trade at this point, it's probably going to be for a corner at least. I really, really hope so. Tre Brown from the Seahawks, source from Seattle, said he's kind of the odd man out. Seattle did draft 2 corners, and they have a brand new regime, so 1 + 1 = 2 here. He has 26 games played, 10 starts underneath his belt. So if you were looking for somebody that is still probably more of that press man corner. Tre Brown is a name to throw out there. 2 interceptions, 6 PBUs last season. Is a little bit undersized, so like I don't want to say – I feel like I say he could be an Amik Robertson replacement for a lot of the shorter corners, but that's kind of how Tre Brown plays, right? He's a spark plug. He's a fun, entertaining guy. And again, it's not somebody that I think is going to be able to be a plug-and-play automatic starter. No, that's not the case. It's more of we missed on Xavier Howard. We missed on Stephon Gilmore. Some of these other players, maybe a Steven Nelson doesn't want to come here, who's a cheap player that you could trade for and have a good value for. But here's the thing. I want to know, let me know down in the comments, if the Raiders could trade for one player only, and like, let's be realistic, right? Because if somebody says Patrick Mahomes, don't get me wrong, if you tell me right now I could trade for any player in the NFL, I'm going to pick Patrick Mahomes. He's the best quarterback on the planet, and you get to steal him away from Kansas City. But the Chiefs, you could offer them 40 first-round picks. They'd probably still say no to keep Mahomes. This is like a legitimate player that could actually get traded this offseason. My vote is the guy coming up next here on this show, and his name is Marshone Lattimore, cornerback for the New Orleans Saints. I was talking to our Saints guy here, Trizzy Trace, and he threw out the name Lattimore. He also threw out the name Paulson Adebo. I also thought it was pretty interesting that about an hour ago from when I started filming live, Ari Meroff also mentioned Marshone Lattimore as a potential trade candidate. The Saints have about $4.2 million in salary cap space right now. The Saints, I said, traded up for Kool-Aid McKinstry. So they were at, 45? They were right behind the Raiders. They traded up to jump Kool-Aid on that run of corners. To me, you do that when you feel like you at least have somewhat of a need at the cornerback position. I also think that it makes sense for New Orleans to trade him after June 1st, which is fun because, remember, the Raiders are going to get about $24.07 million. And if you're Las Vegas, I do wonder if you traded for a guy like Lattimore, who I believe doesn't have any million left on his contract, like guaranteed money, do you decide to give him some guarantees out there? But just like James Bradberry, if the Raiders trade for him this year, you would owe him $1.2 million. The Saints, they're eating a lot of money by keeping him on the books, and they might not be able to do that because they've already been shaving a lot of that money off. When you look at the last 4 years, though, I mean, Marshone Lattimore to me is a legit one of the best corners in the NFL. And well, you guys know how excited I get when I talk about a Stephon Gilmore, how excited I get when I talk about Xavier Howard. I'm being real with y'all right now. I am trading, and I think you could probably get him for a 4th-round pick, a 5th-round pick, because, again, this is more of the Saints are trying to shed some money aspect. You could trade a 4th or a 5th, get Lattimore. I would rather the Raiders do that than go out and sign Xavier Howard, then go out and sign a Stephon Gilmore, because Lattimore, what he brings to the table, that mentality, and I agree here with Ron Raspberry, Lattimore is a legit number 1, where I still think Gilmore can be a legit number 1. Xavier Howard, I still think he could be a legit number 1. I know for a fact, Lattimore, I know he's in Saints stuff right now. You put him on the team, and Lattimore is like what a lot of people were thinking and hoping Marcus Peters was going to be. Tough mother effer, not afraid to be put on an island, and is going to whoop some people up. Marshon, if you want to become a Raider, let me know, because I am all in on that idea. The final player coming up here on our post-draft trade candidate video is Jamin Davis, linebacker for the Commanders. Formerly came from Kentucky, and this was a player that I was really high on coming out of the draft. And the Commanders have invested in linebacker this offseason, whether that be in free agency and in the draft. I mean, Washington has had so many draft picks, so much money in free agency, and Dan Quinn and company, they've been making a lot of moves. Anytime that a team has a new regime, and not only a new regime, like you talk about owner, GM, head coach, this is a total facelift. And Davis has been a really solid player, but he's also like not part of this regime. So could you see an organization to say, okay, maybe we're going to move on from somebody to give somebody that we signed or drafted a little bit more playing time? 45 games played, 36 starts in 3 seasons with the Commanders, 89 tackles last season, 3 sacks. He's been a really solid inside linebacker. And if I'm the Raiders and I'm looking at somebody like a Divine Diablo, and I'm just not 100% sure what I think about Diablo, he's got 1 year left on his contract, right? Could you potentially decide to move on from Diablo, save $3.1 million by cutting him? I know cutting him scares a lot of people to say that out loud, but it is a surprise cut can of the mind. Could you go out and decide to get a guy like Jamin Davis, who to me, is a better linebacker than Divine Diablo. So one more time here are my Raiders trade targets post-NFL draft. I have offense on the left, defense on the right. I really, really want this team to go get a corner, especially Marshone Lattimore would be the top name. And then, I'm not even shitting you, like Dorian Thompson-Robinson at QB, that would move mountains here on the show. If you want to take a screenshot, tag Chugs and I'm at Mitchell Renz 365. Jeremy is at Jeremy Chugs, also on social media. Appreciate you guys for tuning in and watching the Raiders Report.